Hello and welcome to a long overdue Who's He video podcast with me, Phil. Now, with the lack of Doctor Who on our screens at the moment, it got me thinking of what other Who related stuff is out there. Well, on the last vidcast I spoke about Doctor Who annuals, as well as mentioning the DVDs and books that are out there as well. But one thing that's also lurking out there are parodies. Yes, our favourite show has been parodied on many an occasion. But first, what is a parody? Well, if you Google the word parody, the definition is an imitation of the style of a particular writer, artist or genre with deliberate exaggeration for comic effect. In the main, most Doctor Who parodies are comedic, and I will mention a few, just a few, during this vidcast, but I will briefly touch on other parody styles a bit later on. But first, let's talk about our first parody, and indeed the first Doctor Who parody ever made. And that is from Michael Bentine's comedy show It's a Square World, which aired on the BBC from 1960 to 1964. Now, for those of you who don't know who Michael Bentine is, he was one of the founder members of the BBC radio series The Goon Show, which is often quoted, and also in my opinion, as changing the face of British comedy. But in this show from 1963, one of the show's sketches, called The Doctor's New Invention, featured a character called Dr. Fotheringay, played by Clive Dunn, who would later find fame as Corporal Jack Jones in the BBC comedy classic Dad's Army. In this sketch, in which the title character launches a rocket from the BBC television centre, Dunn is dressed as the First Doctor and apparently wears the same costume and wig that William Hartnell wore for the role in the show itself. While the sketch now may seem very dated, BBC comedy shows often parodied other BBC content, and even in 1963, Doctor Who was certainly a target and would continue to be so throughout the years. But now let's jump forward to the 1970s and children's comedy TV show Emu's Broadcasting Company, which ran from 1975 to 1980. Now, for those of you who don't know or don't remember who Rod Hull and Emu were, they were an insanely popular variety act who enjoyed considerable television success, but basically, well, doing this. Yeah. Anyway, Emu's Broadcasting Company was Rod Hull and Emu's first TV series for the BBC, and the format was that Emu had his own TV station and featured parodies of many TV shows, and you guessed it, Doctor Who was one of them. And this being the 1970s, of course this was the era of Tom Baker, and their parody featured their version of the Daleks, which were literally dustbins, as shown in this very low quality clip. I can remember watching this as a child and actually quite enjoyed it. Though what surprised me now when watching this over 40 years later is that this sketch features some quite outlandish music from the BBC Radiophonic Workshop that, to be honest, wouldn't have been out of place in the Doctor Who itself. Now we're going to remain in the 1970s just a little while longer with London Weekend Television's sketch show End of Part 1. This sketch show, born from the BBC Radio 4 comedy series The Burkiss Way, featured a parody called Dr. Eyes, which seems to poke fun at Tom Baker's wild stare. And the obvious target of this sketch is the cheap production values of Doctor Who, and also the Doctor's companion is just to stand there and, well, look pretty.
Ah, the planet Chroma Key 5, home of the dreadful... We must be very careful, Gloria.
Is this where I scream and point, or where I sprain my ankle?
But now we're going to move into the early 1980s with the Lenny Henry Show. Lenny Henry was and still is one of the UK's most popular entertainers, who started out in the 1970s in light entertainment, before moving into alternative comedy in the 1980s and then acting, for which he has won great acclaim. But the Lenny Henry Show sees him in light entertainment mode, and this was a sketch show in which he often appeared as various characters, some of which he became very well known for. But in this sketch, we see him in a Doctor Who parody, in which his Doctor appears to be based on the film character Shaft, complete with Tom Baker scarf. This sketch appears to be set on the remodelled TARDIS set and prop, and also features Earthshock-style Cybermen. The plot of this sketch sees the Doctor landing in England 2010, such a long time ago, and finds the Earth taken over by a Cyberman Margaret Thatcher. So far, so 80s, and referencing Thatcher makes it quite dated. Though I do reckon that people suspect that Thatcher was actually an emotionless cyborg anyway, and I don't think she did anything to prove them wrong. Now we move to the other side of the globe with Australian programme The Late Show from 1993. This is a show I know absolutely nothing about, and I stumbled across this one by accident. This sketch, which again aims for the obvious target of Doctor Who's cheap production values, this actually quite affectionate parody as an authentic take on the Fourth Doctor, unit and some remarkably good Dalek props that strangely enough look better made than the ones built by the BBC Special Effects department. And seeing that Doctor Who repeats was shown more often on Australian television than on the BBC itself, it's not surprising to me to see the Aussies poking fun at it. But now folks, the Who's He podcast is going to go X-rated! Yes, apart from the usual comedic parodies, there are adult entertainment parodies also. Yeah, alright, let's be honest, let's call them porn parodies then. But believe me, and no doubt some of you may have seen some of these, there are indeed porn films that parody Doctor Who. So while I'm not able to go into any detail, I will share with you some of the names of these saucy extravaganzas that have popped up since the show's return in 2005. So first up we have Dr. Screw, that features their version of the Ninth Doctor and Rose, and as you can see from the DVD cover, the only thing remotely connected to the look of the Ninth Doctor is the leather jacket, it seems, and that is all I'm going to discuss on this particular one. But next we have Doctor Horror, where no attempt is made to make the title sound remotely like the original. This sees the 11th Doctor, Amy and Rory romping in the TARDIS. But this parody also features Martha Jones, Captain Jack, River Song, here called River Dong, and also pipping the actual show to the post a female 12th Doctor. Maybe the porn industry is more progressive than we thought, eh? But have a look at this picture of their take on the Cybermen, and you get a pretty good idea of the production values here. Mind you, who watches porn for their production values? And lastly, we have quite possibly the worst title of all, Dr. Lou and the Filthy Farlex. Without going into any detail, this does not relate to Doctor Who in any shape or form. And you know, when they rename the TARDIS to the TARDIS, you know they're in for a bumpy ride. Interestingly though, the Terry Nation estate put a block on commercial release for this particular shagfest, so maybe putting an alternative spin on the Daleks plungers is just a step too far for the Nation estate. But, in the interest of science and public service, I'm going to watch one of these gloopy extravaganzas right now.
I've reversed the polarity of the neutron flow. Now let me have elements with things.
Doctor, it's bigger on the inside.
Hey, look at Stuart. Why don't you join us?
Oh,
Splendid chaps. All of you.
I'll see you in the new year.